Alright, I'm here to protect you from the Yellow River. It will definitely not reach you in Queens, New York. And the four books are 《论语》《孟子》《大学》《中庸》. And the five classics are 《诗经》《尚书》《礼记》《周易》and 《春秋》. And all of these are written or compiled before 300 BC by Confucianist scholars, with the exception of 周易. Now, I would delve into the specifics of what the four books and the five classics are, why they're considered the standard and the backbone of Confucianism, and why these are the books that are considered to be, the standard, and just in general their impact. But this is really just a segue so we can talk about Shangshu, which is a segue into the real topic of the video. But enough of this meta narrating, and let's talk about Shangshu. Now, Shang means up or previous in Chinese, and in literal translation, the book from the previous time, or more functionally, the book of documents is what Shangshu means. And that is what it is. A book supposedly compiled by Confucius himself that contained core documents and records made by previous emperors and, record keepers. And one of the first chapters of Shangshu tells the story of Da Yu, where he actually does flood control with the Yellow River. And it took him 13 years, turning into a bear and also getting help from a dragon and a turtle. And after successfully controlling the Yellow River, he became emperor and created the first Chinese dynasty, the Xia dynasty. Well, okay. The existence of the Xia dynasty is still an ongoing archaeological, debate. But anyways, according to the Shangshu, after becoming emperor, he set up camp in modern-day Shanxi province of China and divided the known world into 9 provinces, or zhou in Chinese. And these 9 zhou were Jizhou, Yanzhou, Qingzhou, Xuzhou, Yangzhou, Jingzhou, Yuzhou, Liangzhou, and Yongzhou. And now, not much is known about the specifics of the nine zhou or 9 provinces, and its historical accuracy or existence is pretty, iffy. And the subsequent Shang and Zhou dynasty follow more of a traditional feudal system, and that's mainly because of actual technological obstacles and just other ethnic groups existing in the land of China. And so, really, all they did was distribute land to subordinates, who in turn distribute land to lower subordinates and send them out into the wilderness so they can conquer more land for themselves. And this is how it works for around a millennium, until the Chinese region is truly unified under Qin Shi Huang. Now, after he unified the known world, Qin Shi Huang faced a particular issue. See, he unified the country, but the country isn't really unified, right? All these other kingdoms that he conquered have not been adhering to central power, the Zhou dynasty, for 3, 4, 500 years. That they really think of themselves as independent and different, and their people aren't really thrilled to be a part of the Qing, or really consider themselves to be Qing people. And furthermore, the original nobles of these kingdoms still have a great influence over their lands. So he either killed nobles or moved them to the capital to be monitored, and abolished feudalism in China. Now, I say feudalism, but there is still an ongoing debate about whether this system should be called feudalism. For the sake of the video, I'm still just going to call it that, because it's operated quite similarly to European feudalism. And with the nobles dealt with, he began building the Great Wall and other projects to keep the conquered busy. He also burned books and scholars in an attempt to unify thought. And to break up the original kingdoms and to replace feudalism, he split the country into 36 jun, which again are like provinces, and 36 is the widely accepted number, but there are theories naming 40 to 58 juns. And every jun has a junshou, which takes care of civil affairs, and a junwei, which manages the military, and a junjian, which monitors, all the bureaucrats, the junwei, the junshou, and if they're doing the job. And under the juns are the xian, which you can think of them as a combination of counties and cities and towns. And there are estimated 700 to 1,000 xians under the Qing dynasty. Xians also have their own power divided between the xianling and the xianwei. So again, divide of power between military and, paperwork. And this system didn't really pan out. And it's not exactly the fault of the system, right? The Qing dynasty simply did not have the facilities to be decentralized. Also, it's really too rapid a change to be implementing immediately after conquering 6 other countries. And also, there are just many other underlying issues with the empire. And so much so that the dynasty almost immediately burst into revolts after Qin Shi Huang's death. The Han dynasty was established after Liu Bang came on top in the Qing revolts, and he saw the vision and potential of the Qing system. But he also had to proclaim that Qing was the source of all evil, worshippers of Bao, and at the same time, he had promised to give out kingdom-level titles to contributors and allies. So the total adaptation of the Qing system was off the table. He then created a mix of 2 systems. And this mixed system was called the dual system of provinces and kingdoms. Now, over his 8-year rule, he eliminated most of the kings that weren't a part of the Liu family and left all of the kingdoms to 2 members of the Liu family, and basically proclaimed that no one who's not Liu gets to be king or emperor. And over time, the kingdoms grew real powerful. They had their own armies, they had their own laws. At one point, they even controlled more land than the emperor himself, right? Out of 60 juns or provinces, the emperor only directly ruled like 20, while the kingdoms controlled over 40. And obviously, emperors saw this as a threat. And they were correct, because kingdoms rebelled. Like the short-lived 7 Kingdom Rebellion that lasted for about 3 months. So that's when, the emperors had an actual reason to crack down on this, and they forced kingdoms to split their land among heirs, which is a policy called, shared inheritance decree, and that really strengthened the power, right? Kings also lost control of their armies and officials, and they kind of just became like wealthy landlords that. So now with the kingdoms weakened, Emperor Wu has already expanded Han Dynasty's borders further than ever before. He really depleted around 40 years of saved up money to defeat the Xiongnu up north. And though there aren't really official provinces yet, the system made it easier to govern large territories. And the naming and grouping of this system was inspired by the Dayu myths, with additional zhous, because there were more territory in the country now. Here's a breakdown of Western Han Dynasty's bureaucracy under the Zhou Jun Xian system. And first off, there's the regional inspectors, or the Cishi, which was introduced by Emperor Wu to oversee the empire's vast territories, and they have, 13 regions that they can operate in, and they don't really have a set office in the beginning. And what they did was they acted as, the emperor's watchdogs, and they aren't rulers in any ways. They only monitored, and they monitored multiple different juns. They also basically investigated corruption, abuse of power, signs of rebellion among local officials, and they reported directly to the central government. Now, a key point here is that they have no administrative power. They can't govern. They can't command troops. The job is purely to oversight, to see. And now, under the second level is the Jun, or the, well, actual provinces, right? And their main official is the Junshou, which is more like the governor. And obviously, they are again appointed by the emperor, and their responsibilities include collecting taxes, which at this day and age, mainly just grain and cloth for the central government, and they manage local law and order. They get the power to appoint judges and to oversee courts. They also organize labor for public projects, so roads, granary, flood control, and they kind of maintain a small local militia for defense only. And they have staffs like assistants, like clerks, like accountants, like record keepers. Those are all under their control. And on the third level is the xian, right? And their main official is it's the xianling, which is again appointed by the central government, and their responsibility is to handle daily governance of the country. They also collected again local taxes, which again is more kind of in corps and labor. They also get to settle minor disputes among land, marriage, theft. They manage granaries, irrigation, basically anything really daily life related, and they supervise local policies. And on top of that, every Jun gets a Junwei, which is mainly just in control of the military, and the power is separated from the Junshou. And again, Xianling, on the Xian level, they also get a Xianwei, which is also in control of the local armies. And this really is a system where the emperor directly appoints governors and administrators to weaken local nobles, and also really to prevent rebellions. And Americans' favorite word, check and balances, right? Regional inspectors really took a look at Junshou, the governors, and the governors had their powers split from the Junwei, so they can't really work together. Well, will not work together. They don't really just have the power to stand up and revolt. And then the governors also inspected or the Junshou also inspected on the Xianling. And the Xianling also directly answers to the Junshou, not the local nobles. And everything is detailed. They have records, they keep records, and really it's pretty well documented. And the Eastern Han Dynasty followed pretty much the same structure as the Western Han Dynasty. The only thing that changed is that during the Yellow Turban Rebellion, Emperor Ling promoted some inspectors to become provisional governors, or zhoumu, to really suppress these rebels and the remnants of the rebels and other uprisings that came along with the rebels. And these governors were granted full military and administrative authority over their provinces, which kind of gave them independence and ultimately fractured the empire and began the age of the Thin Kingdoms. And another difference from the Western Han Dynasty structure in the Eastern Han Dynasty was that fiefdoms or kingdoms are granted to imperial princes and princesses oftentimes, but these areas still operated like a normal Jun. The only difference is that, well, earnings from this area, parts of it goes to this prince or princess, and they still had the same operating system where the actual person in charge of governing is a chancellor or xiang that was appointed by the central government, and not the prince to govern the kingdom. Again, this is really a way to, keep the royal family happy and also give them money to spend, but also not giving them any actual powers.